Hi guys, welcome back to Star Wars Timeline. My name is Ben. In today's video highlight, we're going to take a look at Darth Malak, one of the most popular characters from the Knights of the Old Republic series. This video will be broken into several sections. In the beginning, I will give you an overall story synopsis of this character, just to give you a little taste what he's all about. In the following section, we'll discuss his personality traits as well as his Force abilities. And at the end, I'll give you guys my personal impressions of what I thought of this character when I first encountered him, as well as what I hope to see in the future. And as always, I really appreciate your time and support, guys. If you enjoy my videos, please consider subscribing, hit that bell button, and don't miss my future content. Anyway, without further ado, let's dive into it. I have my notes in front of me. Let's begin with a character highlight. Before we get started, let me just quickly mention that the name Revan will be mentioned in this video a lot because it's very synonymous with who Malak is. Anyway, here we go. So Darth Malak was this ancient human male Sith Lord who lived 4,000 years before the events of the movies. His original name was Alec, and he was born on a planet called Quelli in the Outer Rim territories, which are far removed from Coruscant, from the center of this galaxy. When the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders attacked his home planet, he was forced to flee. And he eventually found his way to Coruscant, where he was taken in to the Jedi apprenticeship. And he became a Jedi Padawan, eventually making his way through the ranks and becoming a Jedi Knight and so forth. He quickly became friends with one of the other popular characters called Zayne Carrick. It's a character we see in the Knights of the Old Republic comic books published years ago by the Dark Horse. I highly recommend you guys check it out as well. And the two Padawans quickly became friends. All this time, the Mandalorians are attacking innocent planets across the galaxy, and they're waging their New Crusader wars because they're this very militant, very savage kind of like group of people. In the meantime, Alec and his best friend Revan, that he also encounters in the Jedi Temple, they disobey the Jedi Council because the Jedi Council always preaches reservation and always analyzing situation and not jumping into the forefront of events. The Jedi Council of old is very much what we see in Star Wars prequels, where they were unwilling to follow the Republic's rules, the government laws, and jump into the forefront of battles. They were kind of like adhering to their code and trying to be the guardians of peace. Anyway, headstrong and young Alec and his friend Revan, they disobey the Jedi Order. And they join the Republic forces on these scouting missions across the galaxy. They want to find out what the Mandalorian troops are doing, how they're moving across the galaxies, and what kind of attacks they're making. And the both young friends, they want to be more proactive. They want to take a part of this fight, and they want to be active Jedi. Alec helps his other friend, Zayne Carrick, reveal and defeat this Jedi Covenant. And what the Jedi Covenant was, it was a secret organization of very few Jedi councilmen who share this vision. They see that there will be a Jedi that will come and will completely wreak havoc on the entire galaxy. And they believe that those Jedi are some of their students. And they do something terrible. These Jedi Masters go on and they murder their apprentices. And Zayne Carrick was one of them. And this young Jedi called Alec helps him out. They reveal this conspiracy and they bring the Masters to justice. The reason I'm mentioning this story is because where Alec and his friend Revan will end up later on in their own story. Later on, Alec changes his name to Malak because he now joins the Republic forces. He doesn't want to be chased by the Jedi Council and brought back and chastised for his actions. He said, I don't believe in this old ways anymore. I think the Jedi should take a more proactive stance. I am no longer Alec. From this point forward, I will become Malak. He eventually becomes a general in the Republic forces. He helps defeat the Mandalorian forces along with his friend Revan at Malachor IV. And what they do is, after the battle is won, both Revan and Malak, they pursue the remnants of the Mandalorians into unknown regions of space, where both friends discover an ancient Sith empire. And of course, they meet this new Sith Lord, and he tempts them with promises of power. And he tasks them with this new mission to find this ancient artifact called the Starforge. And as the two friends progress deeper into unknown regions, they discover this ancient weapon, which is called the Starforge, and it's the relic of the ancient Rakatan Infinite Empire, which is long extinct, and they left this space station floating in space. When both Malak and Revan discover it, they realize that this is a space station which is able to produce an infinite resource of battle droids, of battleships, and so forth, and he could just annihilate any opposition, any army that stands against them. By this time, both friends are pretty much corrupted by the Sith Lord and by the dark side powers, but also partially Malak and Revan, they believe that what the Republic stands for is based on falsehood, and that the Jedi weren't active enough to protect the innocent planets from the devastating war that the Mandalorians brought to it. Both Malak and Revan begin to realize that they're slowly turning to the dark side. Yet their sense of duty and proactive action and standing for what they believe is just, they start using this Starforge, and they waged war on the Republic, which they felt has failed its citizens. Same with the Jedi Order. Malak believed, he had a very strong sense of justice, and he believed that the Jedi didn't do enough, that they were too much of pacifists, and they could have employed all of their knowledge and powers to help the innocent Republic worlds, which they didn't do. Anyway, Malak and Revan, they start using the Starforge, meanwhile beginning to foster, like alienating each other from themselves. Revan has his own set of ideas, Malak has his own sense of ideas. And all this time, they start quarreling, and during a major fight, Revan is actually wounded. He's mortally wounded in battle, and this young Jedi female, Bastila Shan, she grabs him and she brings them back before the Jedi Council. And what the Jedi Council decides to do is not to murder him or punish him. They completely erase his memory, and they recondition him, and they say, you're now an unknown, unnamed Jedi Padawan, and you're going to start from scratch. You're going to rebuild yourself, and you want to go after this Starforge and bring it back to us and stop whoever is behind this. Obviously, this builds this great confrontation between Malak and Revan. For those of you guys who played the Knights of the Republic video games, you realize that the master villain is Darth Malak, the character we're discussing here. And Revan, who was his former friend and Sith master, becomes his arch nemesis because he's redeemed, he comes back to the good side, and he doesn't remember his identity, and he goes after Malak. Of course, at the end of it, Malak is confronted by Revan at the end of the original video game, and they have this one-on-one duel where Malak is defeated and killed by Revan, and that's where his story ends. But let's get into the second section of this video and talk a little bit about his personality, and then we will move on to his Jedi abilities and the Sith abilities as well. So we know from a lot of extensive lore, comic books, and video games that we have that Malak is this human male with pale skin. He stands at 2 meters tall. He's extremely powerful, and he has his signature blue tattoos, which cover his shaved skull. He also has this metal shielding which protects the lower part of his jaw to cover this serious wound that was left by his master, Revan, when they have their confrontation. And he has this vocabulary installed into his lower jaw to kind of project this cybernetic sound, which is very imposing and very intimidating. And we see in all the sequences that you could go to YouTube, check a couple of sequences where Darth Malak talks, and all of the Imperials, all of the Sith troops that are under his command, they feel very intimidated by his voice. Before he turns evil, we know that Alec is a very optimistic and headstrong individual. He has a very strong sense of justice, and he's very frustrated with the Jedi Order. Even though he's apprenticing with them, he feels that the Jedi didn't do enough. And he says, well, my planet was ravaged by the Mandalorians. How come you're not doing enough? You're talking about being guardians of peace. How come you didn't help my planet? What are you not doing for the rest of the free galaxies, planets of the galaxy? Why don't you go and help them out? And that kind of clashes with Malak's ideals even before he embraces the Sith teachings. And we know that at one point, Malak feels very directionless. He doesn't care much about himself, or what happens to him next. When he becomes a Jedi Padawan, he feels such a sense of loss and alienation when his home is devastated. And a lot of Jedi Padawans, they give him these different names, and he doesn't even care what he's called. But eventually, he starts adapting this name called Malak, and it brings his mission into focus. It brings his identity and his future mission, his destiny. He believes that he's destined for greater things, and from this point forward, he will be recognized as a Malak, and he wants the galaxy to learn about his deeds. He wants to become a somebody. So it's a classic tale of a man that comes from small beginnings, but he wants to attain great power and great achievements. A very interesting aspect of his character is when Malak and Revan joined the Republic forces on their crusade to defeat the Mandalorians, a lot of the Republic troops praise Revan. They celebrate their name and say, Revan, the liberator, the savior, the great military strategist, and the great mind. On the other side, some of the followers worship Malak as well. And they say, look, he's so courageous and he's so strong and he's brutal with his tactics against his opponents. He's merciless and he will do whatever it takes to protect the innocent. And that's what Malak is known for. And I mentioned before that Malak begins to sense and understand that he's slowly being corrupted by this Sith Emperor and that he's turning to the dark side. But at the same time, he still tried to hold grasp of his Jedi teachings and his own ideas about protecting the weak, protecting the innocent. And even after he turns into a Sith Lord and Revan is the traitor, he escapes back to the Jedi and becomes the good guy, Malak believes that what he's doing, all of the Sith armada that he's amassing and he's using the Starforge, is still for the greater good of the galaxy, because he feels that the Republic has failed the innocent people and he believes that the Jedi didn't do enough, which kind of gave me a sense and a feeling that he's this fallen tragic hero who was coming from the right place, but the way that he went about accomplishing his tasks was not justified at all. So he was a very interesting character to learn about. Now let's take a look at Malak's powers. We know that as a Jedi, he focused most of his training on practicing with a lightsaber forms and using the physical aspects of the Force, whether levitating, moving objects, or moving real fast, or jumping too high. And we know that he's a very skilled swordsman, and later on when he starts being corrupt and different, he adapts this very aggressive one-handed style, which he fights the Revan with, that we encountered in the game cinematics and so forth. He kind of sort of harkens back to what we see. Count Dooku had a very elegant style, and also Malak has a very interesting one-handed style. We also know that he was a master of healing, and when he's tortured at the hands of this character called Demigal on a Flashpoint Station, he blocks out all the pain and he knows how to sustain himself with the Force. As a Sith Lord, we know that he masters all of those major techniques. He becomes proficient with the chokehold, the Force lightning. Once again, he's very powerful with his lightsaber techniques. He can generate stasis, which is a special field which freezes his enemies and renders them immobile, and he can charge into the battle and just devastate anybody on the battlefield. We also know that he can augment his power. He becomes super fast. He can jump super high as a Sith Master. And we know also that he has this ability to amplify his voice, which produces this terrible shockwave in the Force, which once again terrifies his opponents. These are some of the skills that are more applicable to the video game format, and that's why as a Sith Lord he has all these powers, because when you confront him in the video game, he has these all crazy, ridiculous powers that you generally don't find out in the Star Wars comics or literature. It's more adherence to the video games. It totally makes sense for the character. And the last power I want to cover is that he has this master shielding. Again, it's something that is designed for the game, but it's actually quite cool for the Sith character. He could basically make himself momentarily invulnerable to any Force attacks. That's right, you as a Jedi, when you versus him at the end of the game, no matter which powers you use, he creates this field around him, which for a short period of time, nothing can touch him, and is all kinds of badass and interesting technique. Anyway, these are his powers in a nutshell. Let's talk about my personal impression of this character and what I hope to see in the future. So like many fans around the world, I first encountered Darth Malak by playing the original video game back in 2003. I was the early adapter of the original Xbox console when it came out here in the States, obviously being the American system created by Microsoft. I was such a huge fan. This console was a new kid on the block. The industry was populated by Japanese consoles, and here's this American console comes in, and Knights of the Old Republic was the killer app. It was the RPG to play on the system. Obviously, we all put our discs in, and we're like granted with this amazing cinematic, and we learn about this new Star Wars story that takes place thousands of years before the events of the movies. And here's this new villain, Darth Malak. So my initial reaction was like, oh, so he's basically like Darth Vader. His face is not entirely covered by a mask like we see Darth Vader, but he has this lower jaw completely destroyed and covered by this metallic cybernetic implant, which in the beginning, I was a little bit on the fence. I said, okay, so what's going to happen here? Is this a character basically a Darth Vader clone or something else? And quickly, he begins to distinguish himself as an entirely different character. It's a very interesting contrast that they establish because he has a friend, right? In the original trilogy of films, obviously, we learned that Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker at one point were friends, but we never see their relationship being expressed in any way in that story. It's only later, much later in the prequels that story comes about. But here we have this villain who has a very strong relationship with the main hero, and how one of the villains turns back to the light side, but one remains a villain. And also, of course, his visual style, his look was very distinct from Vader or from anything else that we saw before in Star Wars. First of all, his shaved head. This very human-looking face was a very striking appearance. And I gotta say, I gotta give out to BioWare character designers, they created a very interesting color palette. He's very simple-looking. He's not overly accessorized with crazy belts or like paraphernalia or kind of like stuff that makes him just too much visually. He's very simple shape, very simple silhouette, but very striking. And his cybernetic implant, it's very, very signature visual style. The moment you see any picture, any image of Darth Malak, you can't mistake him for anyone else. He looks unlike any other Sith Lord we've seen before or after. As I mentioned before, his storyline also stood out to me. And what I really could sympathize with, even though he's a despicable character, I'm not trying to justify his actions at all, but you sort of feel that he is this tragic fallen hero who had his place, his heart in the right place in the beginning, but eventually turns to evil. It's actually a character model, a story model that we see adapted later on by Darth Bane trilogy, which obviously takes place a couple of thousand years after the events of Malak and Revan. But I felt it was such a relatable and interesting story, and I could totally understand Malak's frustration with the Jedi Council. I was one of the fans that had a lot of questions when the Star Wars prequels were coming out. Why the Jedi needed to be celibate? Why the Jedi needed to take the younglings and separate them from families and say, well, now you're going to live with the Jedi. And attachments are not good. You're not supposed to form relationships. I couldn't understand that because when, as a kid, I saw the original trilogy, the whole strength of Luke Skywalker and Vader and what brings the father and son together and redeems Vader at the end is their attachment, is their relationship. It's a family saga. It's a story of a family. Without family, without somebody that you could rely to or love, life is meaningless. I could never wrap my mind around that concept of the Star Wars prequels, and they kind of addressed that with this Malak character who felt abandoned and shunned even by the Jedi. That, you know, he felt hollow inside and he found meaning only when he became a Sith Lord. So I could identify with a lot of things that he saw, all the faults that he saw in the Jedi Council and the Republic. What are my hopes for the future of the Darth Malak? Obviously, we all know that last year they revealed the full remake of the Knights of the Republic video game. What I really hope they do is expand on his character. I hope we see more cinematics of Malak and Revan in the past, before they turn to the dark side, actually have more conversations, more dialogues of when Malak and Revan are both in the Republic, Maybe you even get to replay a little bit of those past sequences of why they decide to join the Republic, of why they thought that the Jedi Council didn't do enough. We get a little bit of background story through the game that we have, but I would like all of those elements being explored more. If we get kind of like a flashback where you actually take control of Darth Malak, that would be actually awesome. I would be really interested in that. As far as the story outside of video games goes, there is no reason why they couldn't do Star Wars comic books. We know that the Dark Horse once again has publishing rights for Star Wars stories. I think it's a great opportunity for the company that actually gave us Knights of the Republic video games to come back to that chapter and say whether they decided to make it canon or keep it Legends. I honestly don't care. It doesn't make any difference to me. If you want to keep it like two separate parallel lines, please, by all means do that. But I would like to see Darth Malak's story being explored. Maybe he has like a 12-issue miniseries exploring his youth, how he escaped his planet, why he hates the Mandalorian Neo Crusaders, how he decided to become a Jedi and later on the Sith Lord. Or maybe you can create a novel. Once again, we already have a new Star Wars novel that came out in 2021 called Ronin, which is based on Star Wars Visions, which is not canonical. I absolutely love that. Take that avenue. Don't be afraid to explore outside of Star Wars canon, because honestly, this is how I feel about Star Wars Legends. I started reading Star Wars 20 plus years ago, and I love and cherish the rich storytelling that we got for 40 years in a row. But eventually started feeling like it was writing itself into a creative corner. By the end of the Star Wars Legends books, The Fate of the Jedi, you felt that the authors are inadvertently writing themselves into a creative corner. Luke, Leia, and Han are in their 70s and 80s, and they're still running around doing backflips, crazy action sequences, while their kids and grandkids are already adult. It just didn't make a lot of sense. It started getting ridiculous. And I think partially it's because they were trying to adhere to a strict canon. And yes, Star Wars Legends had an overall consistent narrative trying to tell one unanimous canon. Same is happening with the new Star Wars. They're trying to keep it all consistent, one story, but they're now venturing forth and trying to experiment and try different things. I celebrate Star Wars Ronin. It's a book I haven't read yet, but I really want to get to it. I absolutely adore Star Wars Visions, and I think this is a perfect format to take hold of this classic Star Wars character that fans adore around the world. I mean, just Google Star Wars Darth Malak. You'll see fan artworks. You'll see 3D models. There's actually a Star Wars YouTuber who is going to create a Knights of the Republic series created in a cinema 3D, some kind of a cinema program, which is like a 3D produced show with Malak. You actually see a little bit of him recreated. He looks gorgeous, man. He looks so interesting. And I think you can introduce a whole new generation of Star Wars fans to this wonderful character. Anyway, guys, I really hope you enjoyed this character highlight. If you like this video, please drop a comment below. Let me know, when was your first introduction to Darth Malak? How did you feel about the Star Wars video games at that time? Did you feel that they innovated and brought an interesting character? Did you also feel that Malak was a little bit too much like Darth Vader in the beginning? And how was your reaction later on when you started discovering his story? I hope you appreciate this video, guys. If you enjoy my channel, you want to catch a later character highlights, please consider subscribing, hit that bell button, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.